Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check in on a couple worm bins, and the assortment of foods that I came down here with for them is a pretty routine assortment of frozen fruits and veggies, mainly veggies from what I can tell. Looks like stuff that was used to prepare soup for the most part, and there's a little bit of an oddity over here. It's ground walnut. It surfaced when my mom was looking through her freezer. She felt like it was a little bit too old, so it was time to just treat it as ready for composting. So this meal is what we're feeding to the European nightcrawlers. So let's aim the camera down there so you can see what's going on. As you can see, I've already got my glove on, so I'm all set to go. And it's been 10 days since we last checked in on these little guys. So curious to see how they've done with their last feeding. From what I remember, their last feeding was similar to what they're getting today. Just looked like an assortment of different frozen things. And following the typical routine, we fed down the middle. That's what that coffee filter is over there doing, showing us where we last fed. Something about this top cover here on bin number 1. It's just been so durable. No holes developing in it. I believe it is, yeah, it's folded over. It's a double sheet of paper, which somehow really enabled it to survive. You know, out here on the edges you can see a little bit of chewing. Well, it just seemed like for whatever reason, bin number 2's top covering newspaper really got a huge head start over the other one and is looking like it's almost at the finish line. So I really didn't think we could do much with this. In fact, I've got replacements. I just figured let's come in here with fresh top covering newspaper for each system and kind of bring an end to the use of this double piece of paper. And you know what? I'm going to split this double piece of paper in half, even though this piece of paper was originally allocated to bin number 1. I don't see a problem with sharing. So this way each system gets this really nice seasoned piece of paper that can be used to accompany their feeding when we get to that point. And you know, even this feeding zone indicator, which is still surviving, can be used in that same capacity. The feeding zone indicator that we had over here is long gone. Alright, well, let's dig in. Let's see how 10 days of progress in these systems has turned out. Man, these little leaf stems everywhere. They're like little, I don't know how to describe them, but they're like little catapults launching material all over the place. Because as I haphazardly run my fingers back and forth through the material, I find myself bumping into one of these things that's sort of pinned down on one end, so I'm now flexing and putting energy into one of these things. And as soon as my finger lets go of it, it launches its payload of junk. Alright, whatever. Let's get down to business here. Let's check out how the feeding from last time is holding up. Alright. I've got my prepared bedding here because it just feels to me like I've been neglecting it. I've been paying so much attention to doing away with this large collection of napkins that I amassed during the holidays that I've become kind of like a man obsessed with napkins and doing away with them. But it does feel to me like I've gotten the backlog of work to be done when it comes to composting down my collection of napkins. It feels like I've gotten to myself to a man, you know, I mean, I've still got a lot of napkins that need to be done away with, but it doesn't seem like they're just proportionally out of place in terms of just being so much relative to other things that I've got supplies of. Okay, so we've just got various types of paper over here that I just can't seem to resist taking the opportunity here and there while this stuff is in my hand to see if I can chip it apart into slightly smaller pieces so that when it gets blended back in, it's less of a mass of just, you know, paper, and it's hopefully got a greater surface area as a result of me doing that, possibly leading to it getting broken down a little bit more quickly. All right. It's an unusual little leftover from a feeding gone by from a couple times ago. We gave them a couple chestnuts. I think I had 3 chestnuts, so each system got a whole one like that and a half of one. And these feel like the seeds out of a avocado, which sometimes I take a knife to and I break them into smaller bits so that they can break down a little bit more quickly. A banana stem. All right, let's see how bin number 2 is doing. Bin number 1 seemed really nice. It's fair to assume that we're going to encounter a similar setup as we examine how things are progressing in bin number 2. Yep, not too surprising. Chunks of what appears to be paper towel, and I guess the fact that it's in such great shape would suggest that it was probably shielded from worm traffic somehow for some reason. Maybe folded over on itself to a certain degree, or just resting next to something that protected it from worm traffic, perhaps something that was more interesting for the worms to want to check out. So now I could see some sort of leftover here. It seems like the stem end of a piece of vegetable, possibly a head of cauliflower. I'll tell you, other than this, a couple slow composting items, that banana stem, that shell of a chestnut, things like that, seemed like we didn't see much leftover, so that finding that piece of stem over there was interesting. Here's the whole chestnut that was fed to bin number 2, and over here in bin number 2, they're definitely still very busy working on something, because there is a little bit of a mob scene over here surrounding something or another that they're quite interested in. I think last time too we encountered little worm balls, little worm parties happening over here in bin number 2, not so much in bin number 1. Over here too, I think I see the remains of some of the prepared bedding that we most likely used when feeding these little guys. Alright, I definitely feel like giving this whole system a good stir is probably a good idea. I don't know why. I think we probably did that last time already. It's kind of become my way of doing it anyway. I've gotten in the habit of going to the outer edges of the systems to bring material inboard after a feeding zone has been restocked and is ready for backfill. So let's see here. We'll give this nice piece of newspaper to bin number 1 and its counterpart into bin number 2. Not folded over, so hopefully resistant to the slow breakdown. And all this other bedding type materials and leftovers we found, since there is so much of it that's bedding type stuff, paper scraps and everything, why don't we proceed with at least getting some food in on top of this foundational layer of paper that we've already dropped in here, just so we don't have a whole bunch of paper up against paper. Alright, so now it feels like I could start dumping more paper-like products down onto those food scraps and not feel like I'm just going to create a little, a little spot where the material is going to be guarded from worm activity. Hopefully by doing it this way, kind of layering the bedding with the food, gives the food all that much more chance at being exposed to worms coming and going. I don't know if this is a stem, like kind of one continuous piece, so let's treat it as such before I waste a bunch of time trying to break it apart. And this little treat at the end, well, I don't know, it seems like a treat because it seems like bite-sized stuff. Whether the worms see it as a treat or not, I don't know. But a whole bunch of finely ground walnut, I would assume, is something that the worms are probably going to enjoy nibbling on. And, oh boy, man, I just restocked my supply of bedding. So let's drop some of this in here too, because I believe even though we're kind of level with the surface of the bin in general, I think once we start grabbing a few handfuls of material from the outer edges to cover this up with, it'll all aerate to a certain degree and fluff up and become deeper, and then the whole thing will be such that we could just sort of level it all off, and then they'll be welcome to start into their newest feast in the feeding zone. Yeah, this all looks pretty good, although I'm still contending with these little catapulting stems, so it almost feels like in order to move this rapidly around the bin, I've got to almost shield what I'm doing from becoming a kind of a sprayer of material all over the place. Alright, so here's what I had as far as a top covering, but let's not forget, new feeding zone indicators go in too. And let's do the same over on bin number 2 and we'll be finished. Ooh, nice, a little warm party going on over there. Very nice, very nice. I am tempted sometimes to reach over and grab my water bottle when I look at some of this dry material, for example, that we're placing in. The feeding zone indicator is a dry piece of paper, but my prepared bedding brings with it a good bit of moisture, so that kind of counteracts the concern that maybe anything I'm doing here or anything that I'm adding is going to result in dryness. I think we're in good shape as far as moisture goes in here. So, a nice little treat for these wormies now that they've exceeded 100 days in service at 108 days. Feeding number 10 going in with replacement feeding zone indicators, replacement top coverings, and I thought about even coming in with some leafy matter, just dropping a whole bunch of leaves out across the top surface. But I think we're good now. I think the way we are with all that bedding we just dropped into the feeding zone, we're in good shape as far as being on the more generous side when it comes to bedding here. And to sprinkle stuff out on the top surface would have been nice too, but certainly not necessary. So I think we've done pretty good here for these European night crawlers. That's it for the check-in, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.